Okay, so design foundation architecture. What is it actually? An in-depth introduction to the framework for creating consistent, scalable, and high-quality digital interfaces, focusing on the most foundational elements of design. So if you think about a design system, the foundation is, ranges from colors to many greater elements like components, tokens, even the tone of language, many things. But in this workshop we are going to only focus on the foundational elements of visual design. So what does actually architecture means? This means foundational architecture refers to the most basic and essential rules or principles required to create a stable and scalable system. For any complex interface, the foundation should retain its stability and scalability. So that's the idea. So how do we do that? So before going to the details, let me start with the foundation itself. So if you think about this, for any interface, be it a mobile or a desktop, a normal application, normally sized application, or an enterprise scale application, the core foundation or the pillars are this. First is color. Color is one of the most important element in an interface, because if you actually see, no matter what the elements are, be it a text or an icon or a surface or a fill or a gradient, whatever it is, everything is represented using a color, right? We are only seeing the colors there, no matter what the elements or app or components are. So color is one of the most important. The next pillar is going to be the space. Again, by space, I meant, all the vertical rhythms and all the different types of complex grids that we can, use to define and create various components. Next is obviously the typography. Everybody know about that. This is also like super important. So if you master this typography, you have mastered at least, according to me, 50 to 60% of the entire visual design. Then iconography, it is actually more like a subset of typography, but that also needs to be, handled separately, treated with, little more importance. Okay. So why these four? So if any designer can master these four pillars, color, space, typography, and iconography, he or she will be like all set to create any type of complex applications. What will happen is that designer will have a very strong foundation to build upon. Any further complications, be it an AI or images or video, whatever it is, everything can be built on this foundation. So if you have any gap here, that is going to affect in the long term, especially building enterprise level multi-leveled applications. So this workshop is to revisit the basics, the very basics. So in this exercise, obviously, if you actually see every pillar from this foundation will take at least one full day to explain. So because of the time constraint, what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on one pillar, which is the color in this group. Why? Because as I mentioned in the beginning, color is one of the most important element in an interface design. And if you can master that color, that complexity of the color, you can master everything else in a relatively easier way. Probably space, a spatial system also holds some sort of complexity together with the color. That is an all separate topic altogether that we can be discussing at a later stage, if you get a chance. Okay, so let me start with the color. Okay, so what are we trying to achieve here? So as the first slide mentioned, my intention is to give an introduction, but make it in depth. Okay, so I'm going to speak about the color foundation, and the same principles can be actually applied to every other pillars or foundational elements. So where do we start? Okay, so when we start a application design process, generally we will be provided with one brand color, one primary color from a brand. It could be any color, but there will be having a starting point. Otherwise, we'll be deciding that brand color for the client, but in any case, we'll be starting with the first color block. So for this example, I have selected this particular color. So how do we create a system or an architecture from this? Okay, one thing I wanted to mention is I'm not going to talk about the color selection, like color harmonies, color rhythms, all those things. This comes actually after that. Once you have the color, how do you make it usable, manageable, scalable for an application? Okay, our focus is going to be only there. Okay, so what happens when we get a color? If I go to the color picker module on the Figma or Sketch, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create different shades of this primary color. So I'll be generally going to this color palette, color picker. Okay, so I'm being presented with a huge problem here. So what I'm seeing is millions of different shades of the same color, and generally what I do is I pick any value. I'll be doing some eyeballing and selecting some colors and trying to create a palette. So here what happens is we are generally using the hex values. So the first step is to ditch the hex value based approach. Instead, as designers, we should be sticking to the HSL color mode, which is hue, saturation, lightness. Okay, so first step is to understand what this actually means, how to decode this name, how to make sense of this name. So hue is what? Hue is nothing, the name of the color itself. In this case, this is a blue. The value is 208. If I change the value to 0 or 360, the red color will be rendered here. So hue is nothing, the name of that particular color represented in digits. Saturation is nothing but the amount of pigment in that color. So by that, what I meant is, if you make the saturation to 0, you'll be getting a gray box without any pigment. If you make it 100, this is like fully saturated. Next is, what is lightness? Lightness is nothing but the amount of light that falls on this color. So in this example, you have 20 unit light or 20% of light. So if you make it 0, it will become all black. And if you make it 100, interestingly, what it says is you are putting 100% of light on it, and it will render this white. Okay, so that is very important. So to understand how the hue, saturation, and lightness works. Okay, so if I take this brand color example and make the lightness to 100, it will render white. It will be rendering white, and if I make the lightness 0, it will be rendering black. So to get the absolute pure form of that brand color, I'll be using the lightness value of 50. So if you take any color, fix the hue value, make the saturation to 100 and lightness to 50, you'll be getting that freshest possible color palette of that brand color. So this left side blue is derived from this particular shade or blue. Okay, so I'm okay. Then what happens? So the advantage of using an HSL color system is, in this example, I have selected our primary color and I have reduced or changed the lightness a bit. So please understand that in this case, I have retained the hue as the same value, in this case, which is our 208, and the lightness, sorry, saturation is 100. I'm changing only the lightness. So instead of going to this color picker, I'm going to manually adjust each and every settings of this HSL color system. So if I tweak, if I make the lightness to 40, you can see what is happening. The light is being reduced and it goes to a darker shade. And if the light is 0, it will be rendered black. So this creates an Y. This creates a Y axis. Similarly, I can also create an X axis. So what happens is on this X axis, I'm reducing the saturation, but maintaining the lightness value as same. So for example, for this X axis, the lightness is going to be always 50, but saturation is gradually reducing. So what I'm doing here, I'm actually constructing a grid based on my original brand color. Okay. Uh, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend this. Like here I have used a multiple of 10, and in this case a multiple of 20 to create this grid. Instead, to make it more flexible and usable and also future proof, I'm going to uh, use a value of 4 as a scale to create my color grid. So if you can remember, actually, for the spatial systems for handling the spaces, various various apps across the internet use this 8-pixel hard grid and soft grid to maintain a rhythm while working with white spaces. So similarly, what we are going to do is, so if you see this HSL value, okay, so for one thing that I have to mention again is the hue is locked. We are not supposed to change that to retain the color integrity, because this is brand color. The moment you change this value, we are going to shift that family of colors. So don't touch that, it's locked. What is left? Saturation and lightness. So what I'm going to do is, for saturation, I'm going to, incrementally increase the value by 4. And also for lightness, I'm going to do the same. So what I'll be getting is this. So this is my modular color grid. So what it does is, as I mentioned earlier, there is a scale of 4 unit, and based on that scale, I have created different levels of colors, different saturation levels, and different lightness levels, and created this grid. Okay. So what is the main advantage? This on the left, I have a sea or an infinite levels of colors to pick from, and I don't know what to pick, where to go, how to choose. But on the right side, I have converted the same color palette into a much more usable, manageable color grid. So here, even by looking at it, we can all see that this is much more predictable and manageable, because for example, if I want to select a particular shade of light gray, I know where to look, where to go, and it is very, perfectly defined, very clearly defined. But in this case, I don't know what to do, which gray, which shade of gray, at what lightness level, I have no clue. But this is based on color system, and also this is, derived from a 4 unit color unit. Uh, it is much more manageable. Okay, so the first step is using my primary color. I'll be creating a color grid based on this rule. Same rule I'll be applying to create my other functional colors. For example, this is the color for success, and this is the color for uh, danger, and there could be colors for alert, and there could be colored for like custom colors for brand specific things. All those colors I'll be constructing these grids. Okay. Now that we have created our grid, now how to use this, or how to derive our color palette from this grid while creating the, or for creating the application. So the designer will be choosing a particular color based on his or her, design. So in this case, I have selected this example. I have decided that I'll be using this color as my primary, and I have a plan to use it as my, button fill color. I have selected this. So interestingly, one thing happened is the moment I select a color from here, I know that this is coming from the x-axis 22. So saturation is going to be 22 and the lightness is going to be 10. And if I have to select another color, say I'm going to create a filter chip, I want it to be very prominent, but not as prominent as this primary color. I should be ideally going to the same y-axis, which is of saturation 22, and pick another color from this. For example, in this example, I might use the 15, the box which is here. The advantage is you are actually retaining a color integrity. So the brand color is not changing. You are just playing with the saturation and lightness, because in every case, the hue is 208, which is our primary color. Okay, so the moment I select this, I have derived a basic color palette and I have given it a name, which is primary 2210. So primary is the color name. So in this example, I have used hue 208. I have named it as primary, or I could call it my brand name, whatever it is, maybe brand X 2210, something like that. So this is a way to name my palette. So I have selected this. So similarly, what I'll be doing is, based on my design need, I'll be selecting multiple colors from this color grid, and I'll be creating a group of palettes. So I'll be getting this. This will be, let us call this as base colors. Okay. So here what I have done is I have created a set of primary base colors, and which will be used for buttons, for some highlighting, for some creating some particular type of background surfaces, many things according to the app. And there will be always having a second set called accent colors, again brand dependent. In this case, I've used some sort of yellow color, and also we'll be having a neutral color group, base color group, which will be dealing with all the neutral things like creating tables or background for or surface for a particular type of cards, slide outs, things like that. So neutral, for any neutral purpose, I'll be going to this. One thing I wanted to mention is, while creating this neutral color palette, I can come to the color grid and decide from where I should be picking it. So if you see this color grid again, generally when we design any app, we will try to bring a hint or a touch of the primary color on all the neutral surfaces, so that it creates a cohesive or a belonging to the whole brand family. So there'll be a slight tint of blue, a touch of blue in every gray backgrounds, which is very very subtly visible by naked eye, but it works. So according to that need, I'll be selecting a saturation level. So maybe I'll be choosing 5 if we need more blue in my neutral surfaces and backgrounds. If I need very less, it should, if I want it to look very grayish, very neutral, I can go to 1 or even 0 if I want to have like that. So maybe for this example, I can say we are going to stick with 2. Okay, so from 2 I have derived all these neutral values. So if you see this color name, I have named it accordingly. So the first one is primary 2210. What that means is I have selected my primary color 2210 from this grid. And if I go to 2213, my next color is 22 and 13. 13 is this. Similarly, I have selected this, and neutral, I can see that the saturation is 2. Okay, always 2. What that means is all my color belongs to this y axis. Again, I'm repeating. This is because we are, retaining that color integrity. It belongs to one family. Okay. Now, the same thing I'll be using to create functional colors like, success, danger, alert, and I'll also be creating, a custom color group. Custom color group is nothing, very brand specific. For example, if I am working for a hotel chain and they have multiple properties and each property is having a different, color value. For example, for mountains, I have green, and for ocean, I have blue, based on those custom colors, I'll be creating a palette again with the help of this HSL color grid. Okay, now once we have all the base colors ready, this actually means nothing here because I can, I am just getting some technical names which represents my color, but I should be, as the next step, I should be creating a semantic color group or more meaningful color group. Okay, so here what it does is, we have categorized all the color usage, based on some logic. So there is background, there is surface, there is fill, line, text, and icon. So what it does is, okay, before going there, I just missed one critical part. Let me go back to the color grid. Okay. Now imagine a scenario. I have selected a color from level 2. Maybe I'm using level 2 and color 24, which is this. And I have started, constructing my application. And at a later stage, maybe 1 year from now, there comes a new requirement where I need a lighter grade than that 2 and 24. So instead of going to the color picker and, eyeballing a lighter shade of gray and picking some value, I can very well come to this grid and, pick the next lightest shade. So what I also allow is, or what this grid also allows is, if needed, remember our original unit is 4, like everything is multiplied by 4, but if needed, we can break that and bring a multiple of 2 for that case. So for example, I have created a neutral 224 gray, but for some other case, I needed something even lighter. So what I did is I selected a new value, but I have used a multiple of 2, which is translated to 5.5. So 2, 24.5. So what it actually means is 24 means what? 24 means a lightness value of 96. 24.5 means a lightness value of 98. That's it. An incremental of 2. Next possible values, lightness value of 99. But, I don't generally think that will be used for any applications unless for any, totally exceptional, total exemption. Why? Because the difference between white and a such subtle gray is very, very less. So, at least, a lightness value of 98 is recommended. So that's the precise reason we are allowing the color grid to be broken down to a multiple of 2 if needed. And that will be definitely needed, The 4 is not going to work always, Okay, so what is the advantage? The main advantage is, we can maintain a consistency, bulletproof, watertight consistency, because everything follows a very strict rule. Nobody is allowed to break that. And at any point in time, if someone needs to introduce a new color, they know what rule or what system to follow. And any designer who is leading the project can easily troubleshoot if at all, something is failing at any level, because there is a system in place. And, this covers, most of the first principle of color selection. What that means is it cannot be further broken down. This is like the end thing. Okay, and imagine, for a complex app, 50 designers are working for one particular app. The chances for creating some inconsistency is huge. The more the people, the more complex it becomes. So here, that will never happen because everybody knows the rule and what to do, and it cannot be broken. Okay, let me speak a little more about this semantic color grouping. Okay, so what it does is, see, I have derived few color palette from here, and I have categorized it based on its character: primary, neutral, accent, functional, and custom. And from this, I'm going to categorize it further. Basically, I'm going to create a new bucket based on its meaning, like where it will be used. This can be called as semantic colors. First is background. Background is nothing but a large surface area. I'll be showing an example after I explain this. Surface is a smaller, area, more like a subset of a background. And there comes fill. Fill is a subset of surface. An example for a fill will be a button. The background or the color of a button will be treated as a fill. And there comes line, which is very self-explanatory. And there comes the text, which is also very straightforward. And lastly, icon, again, this thing. So to understand that, I am just showing a very rough example. So in this example, my entire interface sits on this white color. So that is going to be my background bucket. And I have some cards, text cards. So for that card, I have some particular color, and that will be considered a surface. Why? Because this is a subset of this. So it's like we are reducing the size, and based on the size, we are categorizing it to make it more manageable. And similarly, what is next? Smaller than that is going to be fill. For example, buttons, filter chips, things like that will be considered as fill. So if you actually see, a fill can never have a surface. I mean, inside a fill, we cannot put a surface. But inside a surface, a fill can appear. So if you can remember this simple logic, this categorization will be very easy to remember. And for text, yes, text, and for icon, we have icon. Okay, so that is the main idea behind that categorization. So coming back to the color grid. So what is the advantage? Advantage is, see, every design system will need tokens, and whatever I have just said, for example, creating base colors and semantic colors can be easily translated to tokens. And when we have a very strong foundation or structure for the tokens, the job from Figma to HTML will become very seamless, and the app is going to be retaining a pixel perfect look. And also everything will be very cohesive because we are again constructing all the color blocks from based on a rule, the axis. So this is the whole advantage of using the this principle. Okay, coming back to the original 4 pillars. So as I mentioned during this workshop, at the beginning of this workshop, I have just focused on one single aspect, which is color. We can very well use the same principles, but it will be treated differently for deriving the foundation, the first principle foundation for all these pillars. If we can do that, what it actually does is the process will become very systematic, with very less chance of creating errors, unless created by mistake. It cannot automatically come. Then we can actually focus on the original problem, which is, solving problems and creating, services for the client. Because a client, they are not looking for these things, right? What they want is a solution for their problem, or whatever, application they need. So this takes that, it actually masks all the complexity needed in a very systematic and well managed way, and we can actually start creating, awesome user centric interfaces if we have the foundation in place. I will also try to touch a bit of these other pillars. I'll not be showing any slides, but I will try to give some sort of insights there, so that anyone can explore further. For spacing, we'll be ideally using multiple types of grids. For example, a grid with a modular blocks of 8 into 8, 16 into 16, 64 into 64. Based on that, we'll be creating some, we can create components, and also we'll be employing 8 pixel or 4 pixel rhythm to construct a vertical, alignment. So multiple things are there. As I mentioned earlier, that itself requires a totally independent session. It is very vast, similar to color, even actually more complex than color, I will say. Next is iconography. Iconography also needs a system, because what I have observed during my career is, there comes some scenarios like, I am creating an icon. I have created few icons in one particular size. It works fine, but when I have reduced the size, it looks very feeble. Why? Because it is not supporting that different sizes, for extreme sizes. For example, I have created an icon in 24 into 24 pixel size, and now I have to use that icon inside a very small text field, or a drop down which comes in a data grid, and that is going to be having a dimension of, say, 12 into 12. So what happens? The icon will be very small, and it may not look readable or viewable at all. So what I suggest is, treat an icon like a font. Very simple. So if you think about typography, if you think about font, what we'll be doing is we'll be creating different font sizes, say 24, 16, 14, 12. And for every sizes, we'll also be defining a weight, right? A group of weight. For example, for 16 regular, I'll be also having 16 medium and 16 bold. So do the same thing for icon. Simple as that. So what it does is, in the original use case I mentioned, I am going to create a small drop down inside a data grid. Now my original icon is not working in that particular 12 into 12 or 8 into 8 size. So what I'll be doing is I'll be just using the 8 into 8 icon size, but instead of the regular icon, I'll be calling a bold or a semi-bold icon. So what it does is it actually visually balances the things and also make it more manageable, because now we know no matter what the complexity of an application is, we know what to do, if an icon or a width or a thickness is needed. That is one. Second thing is, always treat icon like a monospace font. Basically what it means is nothing. The X and Y both will be same, 24 into 24, 32 into 32, like that. And if at all, we need to change that, for some other use case. For example, I have to keep an icon very close to a text element, and that 24 into 24, bounding box is not working. Use a negative padding while creating the HTML, but don't create icon in different width. Always maintain the monospace philosophy while creating icons. So that covers most of the things I wanted to mention. So I'm just going to do a quick recap. So this is my color. So instead of going to the hex value, I'll be going to the HSL color system, and based on that color system, I'll be constructing a grid using a 4-unit rhythm, and based on that rhythm, I'll be picking up colors for my project. and I'll be creating my base colors bucket. I'll be choosing all my primary, neutral, accent, functional, custom colors there. And once I have my bucket ready, I'll be creating my more meaningful set of colors. In this case, background, surface, fill, line, text, and icon. And what I have also observed is, this particular categorization, like, what is a background, what is a surface, what is a fill, if we can, understand that logic, it works for almost all the applications. So there could be some exceptions, but generally it works for 90 to 95 cases. And also I spoke about how to break the grid if needed. For example, I need a very subtle shade of gray or a shade of blue or shade of a yellow. I know what to do. I can go to that particular block and I divide or add, I create another value, next value, by multiplying that particular x or y value with a 0.5. So in this example, I have mentioned that the original value was 96, but it looks too dark for my use case, and I needed another lighter version for a future use, and I have created that using this principle, and I have now a lightness value of 98. Most of the time, lightness will be treated like that. I don't think we'll be having any occasion, we'll be needing any occasion where we have to break the saturation with a 2 pixel, unit. It's very, it's not that obvious. It's very hard to notice. So most of the time we'll be having that 2-unit rhythm for lightness values. Okay. Then what else? Yeah, I think I have covered most of the things I wanted to. And yes, I'm open for questions.